Good to see everybody. How we doing today? I'm good, Dom. How are you? I mean, I know you're good. I know you just watched that game, so I know you're good. All right. Just got the thumbs up that we are live on all of our digital platforms. My name is Tom Petrini, and this is another live edition of the Ken's 5 Big Fundamental Postgame Show. And we're here to talk about probably the Spurs' most complete win of the season, if we're keeping it a buck. Spurs beat the Blazers 125 to 104. We've talked a lot about the youth movement this year for the Spurs. They're promising young core. Still good. Still very promising. The old guys all scored over 20 points in this game. LaMarcus Aldridge, 22. DeMar DeRozan, 20 and 11. Patty Mills and Rudy Gay each had 21 off the bench. The team as a whole shot over 53% from the floor and over 45% from three. That's good. They assisted 33 of their 48 made baskets, only turned the ball over 12 times. If you look at some of the other young guys, DeJounte Murray in this game almost had another triple-double, 9 rebounds, 11 assists, 9 points, and just 1 turnover. So for everybody tracking DeJounte's progress as a point guard, check off another night in the good column, because he looked great tonight. Top to bottom, this Spurs team executed throughout this entire game. The Blazers played a really tough defense, except against one guy. Maybe they just didn't have the scouting report on LaMarcus Aldridge, but he's pretty good from the top of the key, especially on catch-and-shoot looks. And his former team at the Moda Center just gave him an office there. They were very hospitable. And he started each half making 3 buckets from mid-range, with the Blazers basically just giving him that shot. So the offense for the Spurs was very simple throughout this game. Run, pick and pop, pick and roll with LaMarcus Aldridge, mainly pick and pop with LaMarcus Aldridge, because the Blazers' defensive scheme was to have their big man, in most cases Enes Kanter, sag off and play a drop coverage. When LaMarcus Aldridge spaces either to 18 feet from the basket or to the three-point line, it gives DeMar DeRozan a better opportunity to attack the rim, especially if the other 3 players on the court are all spacing the floor. And that's what we saw from the Spurs on offense in this game, and they really never stopped running it. They just ran that play down the Blazers' throat over and over again until they won by over 20. DeJounte, as I said before, also benefited from playing pick and pop with LA there. But in the third quarter, they went cold, right? They shot really well from 3, really well from the floor in the first half, and then in the third quarter, 1 of 10 from 3. So I had talked to Patty after their last win against the Rockets, and he brought up the stone cutter, right? You just keep pounding, you keep doing what you're doing, and eventually the rock breaks. And that's sort of how it happened in this game. In the fourth quarter, after a frustrating third where they generated a lot of good shots and just didn't hit them, they went off. Rudy Gay had his best quarter maybe of his life. He hit 4 threes, and the 1 3 that he missed, he grabbed the board, threw a falling out of bounds cross-court pass to Lonnie Walker, who drilled a 3, and basically put this game out of reach. We've talked all year about how, Rudy, much like last year, has been shooting better on contested looks than he has on the wide open ones. And credit to DeJounte Murray again. He found him a couple of times in the fourth quarter there at the arc after breaking down the defense, collapsing the defense. Lonnie Walker, who didn't really show up in the stat sheet tonight, but I mean, if you watch the game, he played some really tough defense on Dame Lillard, who had 35 because he's Dame Lillard, and the Blazers were without C.J. McCollum and Yusuf Nurkic tonight, and he, took it upon himself to be a scorer. as one does when they're Damian Lillard. Um, but Lonnie's playmaking is underrated. The way he breaks down the defense. Um, he shot 1 of 5 from 3 tonight, so he wasn't on from there. But, I mean, taking the right shots and playing aggressively. And when you have DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge dominating the game, when they're playing spread pick and roll around those guys, I saw somebody ask, why isn't Lonnie cutting more? Feel like he could be really effective there. Sure. But the Spurs knew what was working for them in this game, right? And it was running that pick and pop with DeMar and LaMarcus and spreading the floor. When you do that, if the if the big man on the perimeter is covered, which he wasn't in this game, then attacking the rim should force a rotation and a switch, and then that can create a kick out. There wasn't too much of this in that game because the Blazers were content to give LaMarcus Aldridge mid-range shots, and he was content to keep draining them. So I know some people might look at the box score, see Lonnie had 5 points, disappointing shooting night, but he was solid, and there are only so many shots you can take. There's only one ball. The Spurs share it really well, though. Still, there's only so many shots you can take in a game. And the veterans, I think, combined to shoot 56 attempts in this game. And they hit a bunch of them, and they scored a combined 84 points. So more power to them. Good for them. But that's going to happen where, some of the younger guys in games like that are going to take more of a back seat. And that's fine. That's the great part about this team, is that there are so many different ways they can beat you. On nights when all the veterans are off, you see the young guys step up. So it's one of those things where they're obviously trying to get consistent effort from everybody, but the overall consistency from the team has been getting better and better. And this was their most complete win of the year. Certainly their most convincing win of the year. They put this away early in the fourth quarter, and that's the first time that that's really happened this season. Even the Rockets in that last game were hanging around to the end for a bit. I do want to give a quick shout out here to my man Jakob Poeltl. Big Yak. Signed a pretty fair contract in the offseason, and then started the season not playing well. He looked soft, he looked timid, somewhat confused out there for the first few games. But he's really stepped it up in the past two. 13 and 11 in the Houston game, 11, 7, and 3. He had 3 blocks in the Houston game as well. So, I mean, if Yak is playing like that, I'm no longer concerned about Yak. That's all he needs to do, is play his role aggressively. And he and the Spurs are so much better for it if he asserts himself in the paint, gets rebounds. He had 6 offensive rebounds in the second half tonight, which is great. The problem for both Poeltl and LaMarcus Aldridge in the first half was that neither of them grabbed a rebound in the first half. It was okay. The guards were rebounding really well. The other guys were rebounding well. The Blazers took a lot of threes that had, long misses. But there were a couple of offensive rebounds in that first half that gave the Blazers extra opportunities. So Yak on the glass in that second half was fantastic. And, I see somebody mentioning Yak boxing out for the guards at the boards, which is true. And LaMarcus Aldridge, his second jump at this stage in his career is not great. So if he's defending the rim on a possession, at the end of a possession, somebody else has to come in and crash the glass. So we've seen the Spurs sort of adjust to that. I know a lot of people want to see more boards out of the starting center. But at this stage in his career, what he's doing this year, the way he fits, LaMarcus Aldridge can still be effective if he's not getting boards, and the team can still be effective in the rebound battle without their big man getting boards. Would love to see a little more consistency from him there. Would love to see a little more consistency from him defensively. But, the way he shot tonight really was kind of how he shot from mid-range, at least, for most of the season, because he's getting a lot of wide-open looks from spots that he loves to be in. And I think he posted up one time in this game and wound up turning it over on a double team. So everything that he's doing is in the flow of the offense, and it's been lovely to watch. It's been lovely to watch him and DeMar, him and DeJounte run pick and pop. And the Spurs offense really has been executing at a high level for all but a couple of these games. They understand how to create the shots they want, and whether they fall or not, they're doing a good job of creating them. The defense in the past 8 games or so, since that ugly loss to Utah, has also stepped up. They've held most of their opponents in that stretch under 110 points. I think the Clippers were the only ones who topped that and got to like 113. But they're really focusing on the communication, on the rotations on the perimeter, on making good decisions, and knowing their personnel. And they've been flat out unlucky in some of these games where, like Rodney Hood tonight. I think he came in averaging under 2 points a game this year, and he went off in this game for 21 points on 9 of 14. But that's happened to the Spurs a lot this year, where they're playing against some depleted teams where there's not a lot of tape on some of these guys, like Mason Jones in the Rockets game, just giving them like 20-some points and pulling up from 3. Like, there are going to be guys that go off on this Spurs team from time to time, but they did a pretty good job, especially late in this game, of tightening up defensively. Jakob Poeltl is a big part of that. DeJounte Murray, a big part of that. Keldon, Lonnie, big parts of that. And when you and Devin Vassell too. Devin Vassell, quiet night, but he had 6 points on 2 of 5 from 3. He had 7 rebounds. He had 4 assists and 2 steals. So he's been a fantastic rookie. He's been a fantastic hooper. I don't really know how else to put it better than what Pop said, where he's just a really sound basketball player. He's intelligent. He looks like a veteran. Yeah, dumb. You're absolutely right. He looks like he's been there for 6 years. There was one play tonight where he got a pretty open look for 3 at the wing, but he knew that Patty was in the corner. And so once the defender came from the corner to rotate, he swung it to the corner, to Patty Mills, who tonight passed Manu Ginobili and now has the most threes off the bench for one team in NBA history. Rudy Gay, after that scalding hot fourth quarter, 1,000 career threes for Rudy Gay. And the Spurs had 6 guys in double figures again tonight, and 4 guys over the age of 30 with 20 or more points, which has never happened for the Spurs before and hasn't happened in the league apparently in quite some time. I'm going to have to do some research on that one. But it's rare. And so for the veterans to put on like they did tonight, I don't think we're going to see many more games where they all score 20 points. But when they do, there's no surprise that the Spurs are going to run away and win that game. And everybody afterward pretty much talked about, in the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter, they went on like a 17-2 run. Um, and everybody talked about how it started with defense and then shots started to fall. And that's something that Patty especially has talked about a lot. That's something that all of these guys have talked about, is just sticking with the game plan when shots aren't falling, playing good defense, and getting in the game that way. So yeah, Spurs looked really really good tonight. They're 8-6 now. They are currently the 5th seed in the West, and they are heading out to San Francisco for a matchup against the Golden State Warriors, who still have Steph Curry and Draymond Green, and those guys are still good. So somebody here saying it's the first time 4 players over the age of 30 scored 20 plus. Spurs account has apparently retweeted that. So if that's kosher. It's probably from Jordan Howenstein, if I had to guess. He is a whiz with those things, the Spurs PR guy. Great dude. But yeah, I mean, this was a fun one to watch. And I love the effort that the Spurs played with. So, you know, in a game like this, right, on the road, afternoon game, no fans in attendance, obviously, but you know, there were games last year where, you know, in a situation like that, they were not coming out focused and attentive and sharp. But the Spurs have looked really sharp on the road. They're 6-2 on the road, and just 2-4 at home. Part of that has to do with who they played. But I mean, they really came out focused. I see somebody commenting here that losing to the Rockets like that was probably the best thing that could have happened to them. Maybe, yeah. You know, you as a coach, right? I don't think Pop needs any extra motivation to get into his guys, but you know, after a game like that where he rips the effort, you know that they're going to be trying to lock in. You know that they're going to understand that they're under the microscope, be remembering that. And, you know, the makes and misses are not what he cares about. He cares about the way that these guys are playing. And right now, these guys are playing good. They're playing good basketball, team basketball. They're moving. They're playing for each other. They're shooting well. And they're taking care of the ball, and they're forcing turnovers on the other end. Spurs are going to win a lot of games, maybe get to the playoffs this year because of that. And, you know, yeah, 6-2 in their last 8 games. They're figuring things out. Everybody is dealing with the same, you know, weird COVID start to the year. But, you know, the Spurs have a lot of continuity from last year. The new group is still sort of getting worked in, and they're figuring out how to communicate against each other. But they're beating good teams. And one last time, I do want to mention this one last time, because I've seen some people saying today, you know, they should have won the gimmies against Minnesota and Houston, and I think they could have won those games. I think they were theirs to win. But the same people that are saying there's no way in hell that the Spurs should have lost those games are also saying, you know, how did they overlook them? Right? So, you know, when you play these 2-game series against these teams, and by the way, both Minnesota played with their backs against the wall after getting a huge emotional boost from Karl Anthony Towns. Houston just got called not good enough by James Harden on national TV. Like yeah, they were going to come out with something to prove in that game. And, you know, for a lot of people saying that the Spurs didn't come into those games with appropriate respect for their opponent, they're the ones not giving the opponent appropriate respect, appropriate fear. So, you know, every one of those guys on every one of those rosters is in the NBA for a reason, and some nights they'll prove it to you. Spurs got a mix of uninspired performances and bad luck against those two teams in those two games, and they lost. And that's going to happen. I think it's going to happen more in this season where there are all of these mini series. We're going to see teams split series that they're not supposed to split, and part of that's because it's tough to beat the same NBA team twice in a row. So I like the way the Spurs adjusted in that Houston game, the second one. And I really like what they've been able to find here. Their game travels well, right? Defense travels. Shooting doesn't always travel. Attacking the rim travels. And the Spurs have trusted themselves, trusted each other in all of these games. So this was a good one. Again, a game they came in as favorites. They were supposed to win. But they took care of business in the most convincing fashion that I've seen them do all year. So with all of that said, yes, can't wait for Derek White to be fully healthy. That should only be a couple of weeks away if the initial timetable provided by Pop is accurate still. This team's a squad. Bunch of guys being dudes. They play hard, and they play a really fun brand of basketball. So, it's been really fun watching them throughout the start of this year. It's been fun watching the growth, not just for the young guys, but for the older guys. Absolutely, Connor. It's absolutely a dude's rock squad. These guys love. I think they genuinely love each other, right? And this is something that Pop mentioned is just fostering that love for each other, fostering that sense of we're gonna go out and play for each other with each other, and that's what makes this Spurs team so much fun for me. So I'm glad you guys hopefully had fun watching today. Hopefully had fun watching this. I'm going to call it for the evening, but I'm going to go through the post-game interviews here and get a big long story up. If you want the full recap of the game, you can go on kens5.com and check out the game blog that I did. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. This has been another live post-game edition of the Big Fun Pod from Kens 5. And as always, go Spurs go. See you next time.